Well, a very special and a humble namaskar and salam dosto. You are watching West Indian Today with yours truly, your host and host Imran Ahmad. Our old friends, today's program is going to be something, it's going to be focusing upon a very delicate topic. And also in addition to that as well, it gives me great honor and privilege to welcome the elites that are going to talk about it. But many people are familiar with the word suicide. Many organizations, such as the one we are talking to, we're in conversation today, has worked towards addressing it and bringing down the fatalities. Joining with me in conversation are members of the Caribbean Voice. It gives me great honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Anand Budram, actually, who is joining with us for the very first time, and also a member of the Caribbean Voice. She's been seen on our show quite a number of times. Television and radio personality, Shanaz Hussain of Shanaz Musical Sensation. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much,
Imran.
Thank you.
First of all, the Caribbean Voice, like I said, it's one of the organizations addressing this epidemic in Guyana. But Guyana still, even to this day, is facing a high number of suicide epidemic fatalities, despite the revolution and the modern world. So first of all, let's get an idea. I mean, what is causing all the growing rates or the rapid increase of suicide in Guyana?
Well, before we get to that, Imran, a couple of corrections. Guyana does not have a high amount of suicide. Remember, we only have about 750,000 people.
Okay.
What the World Health Organization put out in 2014, based on 2012 figures,
right,
was that Guyana then had the highest suicide rate, which is the amount of persons who die by suicide in every 100,000 persons of the population.
Okay.
We went with that, everybody went with that until last year when we did our own investigation and found out that that wasn't true. It wasn't accurate.
All right.
And there was some politics involved there. But when we did the math, it turned out that they had given a rate of 44.4 or 0.2% of persons per every 100,000. The actual rate was about 32 persons per every 100 persons. That's a significant reduction.
Okay.
But that placed Guyana then still with the highest rate.
Right.
Today, the last figures put out by the World Health Organization, Guyana has dropped to number 4.
So
we've
made some progress.
That would have been as a result of the work of the Caribbean Voice and a lot of others. One of the things we had to do, and we continue to do in a number of ways, is to combat myths and misinformation about suicide. I mean, the biggest one we were told from the very beginning, and we are still being told, if somebody wants to kill themselves, there's nothing you can do about it. Absolutely untrue. I'll give you just one aspect of our work. We have a team of counselors, highly qualified, most of them with a master's in clinical psychology, and most of them with 20 plus years of practicing experience. Through them, we offer free counseling. And since we launched in 2014, we've done about 325 cases, most of them in Guyana, but we've also done cases in about 20 other countries around the world, because through our various social media sites, people come to us. And in every one of those cases, it was a suicidal person that was counseled, and that person ended up not taking his or her life. Right. So, somebody wants to kill themselves, you can prevent it.
You can prevent it.
Yes.
Let me go back to actually and rephrase the question a little bit differently. Now, I'm talking about like maybe 30 years ago. Now, this is something whenever we talk about suicides in Guyana, and of course, thank you for clearing up the the misguided information and also the incorrect statistics. But people from that generation in the 70s, I mean, someone told me that in that time in Guyana that they never knew of such a word as suicide. Now, we've seen that the world has actually transitioned and you're hearing about it quite often. So what is the actual cause about it in today's generation, today's day and age? What would you say is the ultimate cause?
Well, they never heard about it because at that point, it wasn't something that people were focusing on.
Right.
I mean, this is the reality of ongoing development. You don't hear about one thing because it's not focused on, but when the focus comes, you hear about it. It doesn't mean that suicide was not going on.
Right, okay.
In the 70s, particularly the 70s, one of the factors that drove suicide, which then was significantly among Guyanese East Indians. Probably about 80%, 8 out of every 10 suicides were Indians. Was what we refer to as the Bollywood factor.
Okay.
Lots of Guyanese, including a lot of non-Indians, used to see, and we still do, watch movies coming out of Bollywood. And in those days, until recently, I would say, maybe over the last 10 years or less, suicide was glorified in Bollywood movies. And the tradition in India has been that suicide is an answer to a problem. It's a way out. And once people grasp that concept, that becomes their answer. So a lot of people, when they were faced with challenges that they couldn't deal with, and in those days there was nothing to help people, took to suicide.
When the Caribbean Voice first made its its visit in Guyana, when this organization was formed, what was the stats then? I mean, in terms of suicide rate in Guyana.
Well, as I indicated, we actually got there when the World Health Organization put out a 2012 figure saying that Guyana had the highest rate. Myself and a couple of others were having a chat on Facebook, and we did some research and we found that the government didn't seem to care about it. And that's not this current government, it was the previous government.
Previous one, okay.
So we thought somebody has to do something. We had no intention of getting involved in Guyana. We simply wanted to do some stuff online. But as we delved deeper, we found that somebody had to also get there. So that was how we created a presence, but we did it differently. Most NGOs outside of Guyana do their work by visiting once or twice a year. We realized that to handle suicide, that wasn't going to be effective. You had to be doing ongoing, regular work on a weekly, monthly basis. So what we had to do was to set up a group over there that we provide training, and that training is still ongoing, and the skills and the knowledge, so that we have a schedule of activities every year that includes a lot of mental health workshops, among other things, and our work is ongoing. For example, last month we had 2 mental health workshops, one with 120-something teachers, and that was the 4th teacher workshop we've done for the year, all of them training over 100 teachers. And then this was the first one we did where we brought parents and students together, and we did a presentation. Earlier this year, we also did 2 presentations in the Sugar Belt to focus on the sugar workers who have been retrenched, because retrenchment leads to depression, and depression or anxiety are the 2 final stages that lead to suicide. And then this coming month, in about 2 weeks' time, we have another sugar workers workshop. So, and when you factor in that all our members work or go to school, some of them both, so they have to use their afternoons and their weekends to plan. It takes a lot of planning to put the logistics in place, and then to go and make the presentation. It is like a full-time work.
You mentioned mental health. I'm going to come to you in just a few, because actually that's something I want to talk about. But Ms. Hussain, first of all, I want to say thank you once again for joining with us on deck. I think the last time you were on the show, it was actually concerning the Caribbean Voice, right?
It was, yes. I am proud to be a member of the Caribbean Voice, a non-for-profit organization that is making headlines in Guyana, positive headlines, and I must applaud the Caribbean Voice. As Anand said, you need some groundwork, and the foundation we established in Guyana with all the counselors and the trainee is doing a fantastic job. It's not number 1 no more in Guyana when it's suicide rate concerned. It went all the way to number 4 because the Caribbean Voice, every week you open the newspaper, the Kaichura News, any magazine, the newspaper, they have been making headlines, positive changes, because due to all the educational programs they've been put in place.
Definitely.
And Imran, if I can jump in there, I thought I was to hear you say it, but you didn't. Shanaz is one of our 2 vice presidents.
Well, we were coming to that actually. Yeah, definitely. And we actually have to say we commend you for being one of the 2 vice presidents, actually, of the Caribbean Voice. I just want to backtrack a little bit before you became one of the 2 vice presidents. Initially, what occurred that you said you want to be a part of Caribbean Voice?
Well, I interviewed Mr. Anand a few years back, and when I listened to his perspective and what was happening in Guyana, I said, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of change, and that is what Caribbean Voice is all about, making a positive change. And we've grown from 5 members, from 1, which is Mr. Annan was the founder. We grew from 1 to a vice president, to Dr. Rodney, who's the second vice president, to Mr. Nazim Hussein. And how many members we have actively right now?
Got about 50 plus members.
50
overall.
members that's doing a lot of legwork in Guyana, and they're all professionals.
Right, definitely. I believe also you, when we were last in conversation, you spoke about the hotline, actually, that people can call and stuff
Yes.
like that. You want to give us a reminder about that hotline that's out there?
We do have a hotline. The number is right below here, and Mr. Anand Budram telephone number is also available. So, and I must say that a very, very wonderful friend of mine that used our service mentioned to me the other day, he applauded the Caribbean Voice. I said, what did they help you with? He said, Shanaz, I refer you to someone that needed help and counseling in Guyana, and I'm impressed that you guys did a fantastic job. That member now he wants to be a spokesperson for Caribbean Voice, because the day he sent out that information that my friend needed help, he's very suicidal. The Caribbean Voice, I put it in a group chat. Members that was in Berbice reached out to him the very same day, and he was impressed that we did a fantastic job. He's very well taken care of, and he wants to be a spokesperson for Caribbean Voice.
For people here, and let's say, for example, a person of Caribbean descent is actually a victim of the mental health epidemic, which maybe unfortunately might lead to them becoming suicidal. What can one do? Let's talk about the locals actually that are here, that are maybe experiencing this problem with mental health.
Well, before I answer that question, you see, one of the things we like to do is to make sure the information is out there.
Right.
And oftentimes information is contextual. It is not that all these issues are new.
Right.
It is that the focus was not there, and a lot of times
Correct.
the knowledge was not there.
That provided, right.
I mean, when I was growing up in Guyana, we'd have what you call mad people. But nobody ever knew that that was a mental health issue.
Yes.
You treat them benignly, you play around with them, you tolerate them, but you never knew that this was a mental health issue.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, people still don't. So as the knowledge increases, more focus is given. You get the sense that it's an epidemic, but it's an epidemic in the sense that more people know and more diagnosis and so on.
Correct.
But it's been there all along.
All along. Yes,
All
that's
along.
true. Yes.
And I mean, I taught a school here in New York City for 15 plus years.
Right.
So I can tell you, I mean, they're close to 30% of the students in the schools in New York City suffer from one or another mental health issue.
Right.
So it's significant. There is so much resources here in New York City that's available. I can't speak for other groups of people, but for Guyanese and
Yes.
Caribbeans in general, the first problem is people are reluctant to admit that there's a member of the family who has a mental health issue, because that signifies some sort of shame.
Yes.
It's a taboo. You don't want to talk about
Right.
it.
Right.
And people are even more reluctant to seek counseling because, quote unquote, and these were the exact words that one person told us, "Mina mad." So only mad people,
Right.
quote unquote,
Seek counseling.
seek counseling.
Yes.
So those are two huge obstacles that have to be dealt with for Guyanese and Caribbeans here in New York City. We have had a number of times people call us
Right.
to say, sometimes you don't know if they're talking about themselves, but they're saying it's a friend or a
Correct. Yeah,
relative.
they will never admit
Right.
it. Yes.
And then I would tell them, or we would tell them, okay, we're willing to offer counseling.
Yes.
Talk to the person, give us a number, we will connect that person with one of our counselors, and whatever happens between them stays between them, because we're very big on confidentiality.
Yes.
And except for once or twice, most of the people never got back to us. So you can see that, if they're not willing to access the help, then it becomes a problem.
Right, correct.
And an example I always cite, I wouldn't give the name, but those of you who know would know who I'm talking about. A very prominent community activist and leader in the Guyanese community, whose son died by suicide a couple of years ago. And only a handful of the family knew that it was suicide.
Right.
And I was going to use a word, that's why I want to talk about it. Usually we say people commit suicide. suicide activists and psychologists over the last few years are saying we must not use that word.
Okay.
Because commit has certain negative connotation, like
Correct.
somebody commit a crime.
Right.
And therefore, we're saying that instead of saying people commit suicide, and we've pushed this in the media in Guyana, and we're seeing beginning to see the change. You say they die by suicide, or they're a suicide victim.
Victim, correct.
Yes. So there is something called, and this brings us in a segue sort of into the real reason I had contact with you for this.
Correct, yes.
There is something called a lay counselors program.
Right.
It's often referred to as gatekeepers. You know, gatekeepers, people who
Correct,
keep the
yes.
gates.
Right.
So the idea is that if you have people in your community who are trained, who know what they're looking for, and who know what are the steps to take once they find the evidence of whatever, then instead of being reactive to these situations, you know, when it happens, then you act.
Then you act on it, yes.
You can be proactive
To prevent it.
to prevent it.
Correct.
And this program was actually tried in Sri Lanka. It was referred to as the Sri Lanka Suicide Hazard Reduction Model.
Right.
Sri Lanka was provided logistical and resource support by the World Health Organization. And in 10 years, focusing on pesticide suicide, which was the biggest problem in Sri Lanka as it is in Guyana,
Right.
they were able to reduce suicide in 10 years by 50%.
Well, that's very good.
Very
So very
significant.
proactive.
And we had been lobbying for this program to be introduced in Guyana, or a variation of it.
Correct.
In 2015, just before the last elections, we had a meeting with the Pesticide Board, the Health Rights of Child Commission, and some other stakeholders. And the Pesticide Board agreed that later in the year they were unroll a program similar to the Sri Lanka one to tackle pesticide suicide. Elections came, government changed. We've been lobbying since, and nothing. And that was why we decided that instead of waiting on the government, we're going to introduce the program ourselves.
And but now he spoke about the program, in which they are looking to be proactive to prevent it. That's one of the things that we've always tried to do. That if ever we always encourage people that if you notice something, if you hear something or suspect something, say something. Don't keep it back. Actually, also he mentioned that many times people will call. A suicide prevention hotline to get advice, but they will never really admit it. Now, if you are someone or someone is experiencing that, kind of like don't really worry about it. Just feel free to confide, and as they said, everything is held in confidence. Now, this program that we are talking about, which you are lobbying for to take place in Guyana, people here in North America, how can they contribute to making this possible?
Well, to pick up from where I left off,
Right.
after we decided we have to introduce this program because we can no longer wait on the government, there's a gentleman by the name of Ravi Dev, who's a very strong supporter of our work in Guyana, and he's a member of a lot of international Indian organizations, one of which he knows is called Seva International, headquartered in India. So he touched base with them. A representative was in Guyana. We set up a meeting with the person, and the upshot was that they offered us a trainer to spend 1 year in Guyana to train people who will then in turn go back to their communities and train others to be these gatekeepers or lay counselors. We're not paying for the service of this person, a highly, highly experienced and qualified lady, by the way. We just have to take care of her stay in Guyana for that year and cover the cost of the training.
Okay.
So we calculated it to be about $32,000 plus we factor in a few thousand for the fee that we have to pay when we set up the GoFundMe account.
Okay.
Which was set up by the end of about a month now, just over a month. The account itself has brought in so far $1,750, but we also have another $1,000+ that came in outside of the account. So at this point, after about 5 weeks, we've got close to $3,000 already, which means that we are on target because we've decided we're going to hold that and continue the fundraising for a year. Raise the funds, bring the lady, implement the program for the year, and then see what happens.
So this is a special request from you, the people, to join in. Now the information, the GoFundMe link is actually just right there on the bottom of your screens, and you can actually be sure to go online. You can also get in touch with myself, even Ms. Hussein, who I'm going to come to right about now. But this is something, as you've listened to everything, what the idea of this project is all about. We implore upon you to donate generously, in large numbers, or whatever you can afford to give, actually, or contribute in whatever way, so that this program, which they've been lobbying for to take place or to be introduced to Guyana, that it can finally become a reality, and that this can actually prevent more and more suicides. I mean, it's a great accomplishment that from on their behalf, that Guyana went from number 1 to number 4. So indeed, in terms of suicide fatalities. Now, like Ms. Hussein, let's come to you now. For anyone who is basically tuning into our program and they're deciding whether or not they're contemplating upon giving something towards this cause, what is something you would say to encourage them to donate generously?
I will say suicide prevention is everybody's business. Help us to help someone, and the Caribbean Voice is doing that. We have a lot of ways you could donate, Imran, and sometimes giving back is a good way, and we're launching a lot of our own memorabilia to show your support by purchasing one of our t-shirts or a mug from the Caribbean Voice. It shows that you're supporting us, and your supports mean a lot because it shows that we could go forward. And the Lay Counselor program is a wonderful program because it says, give a man a fish and feed him for a day, but put those things in place and train the ones in Guyana so they could identify these crises, because Caribbean Voice have members in New York, but we have a lot of leg room in Guyana. So if we prepare everyone to be gatekeepers of various community, the rates of suicide will definitely go down, because they're there, they know how someone acts and how someone changes in behavior, so they could tackle that right on.
And I really
incidentally,
love this. Sure,
it's not only suicide that the Lay Counselor program will be tackling. Abuse, all forms, child abuse, sexual abuse, gender-based abuse. So it gives that scope, and there's an interrelationship between various forms of abuse and suicide. So it gives that scope to be able to raise the overall quality of lives of people.
If someone wants to be a gatekeeper, as you rightly said, I love that term, gatekeeper, how do they go about doing so?
Contact Mr. Anand Budram, Mr. Nazim Hussein in Guyana, and we'll make that possible, because we love welcoming new members. Or even myself,
you, and you can pass
or even Imran, because we love making someone be able to help another human being.
Definitely.
Check out our website. It's easy to find, caribvoice.org.
Right.
We also
Through that,
have
you can contact
a
us.
Facebook page.
7 different social media sites. There's our social media and internet presence gives all the information anybody needs, including all the numbers and all the emails and everything, who you can contact, how you can contact, everything.
Definitely. So the voice
So
of
it's
the
a
Caribbean.
resource,
Definitely.
yes.
It's a great voice, great resources, and of course all the information is right there. We encourage you to be sure to visit them. And also, as we've said, to donate generously. I'm going to give both of you the floor for the final time, actually, to make an appeal for people to donate generously. Let's see if we can generate some more awareness towards this. And anything else you want to add? Any upcoming activities on behalf of the Caribbean Voice? Ms. Hussein, we'll start with you.
Well, yes, the Caribbean Voice have various non-for-profit shows that we're raising funds and support the cause. It's a Concert of Hope done in July 7th, actually, in Orlando, Florida. We're going to California, we're going to Canada, because people are being very supportive. They're coming out for a good cause because they're entertained and they are activate. They know what's going on TV. We spend some time with all the concert we did to talk about what's our progress, what we're doing, educating the audience while we have them there, just for a minute, to let everybody know we're working in Guyana. So they're contributing towards that. That's our program. We have a karaoke program also coming up that people love to contribute towards, and so many other things. One, right now, Imran, I would like to give you our future item that we are launching. This is a gift for you.
Thank you.
And if you could show our audience what it is. Okay. This is also one of our revenue.
It's going to be one of our revenue base.
Definitely. So it's a cup. It's actually a cup on behalf of, and it actually has your logo there, Shanaz Musical Sensation. But the very front, Caribbean Voice. This is one of the very gifts. I want to say thank you also in the bag with all the goodies.
With Mr. Anand Budram personal number on it.
Yes, definitely with his number. And also this shirt, actually, which I must say thank you to both of you guys for this, and I feel actually as if I've been inducted into this Caribbean Voice. So here it is, and that's something that in the near future you'll see me wearing this very soon. I'll probably, the next time I come on the show, I'll probably be wearing this, definitely. But thank you guys so much for that.
So guys, you could support the Caribbean Voice by purchasing one of our products, and you could support by showing that you're wearing the products that you're helping us also.
Definitely. And the next time I have coffee, it'll be in this teacup. So, Mr. Putram, I'm going to come to you. As I said, if there's anything else on behalf of the Caribbean Voice, I would like for you to, at this point in time, reach out to people. But I've also, as you mentioned, you've been an educator for many, many years. And also, we live in a world where I think we've come past the, verbal abuse between students, whatnot. It's somewhat there. But sometimes a negative word or a negative deed done to someone can actually cause an influence another person's thinking, and that somewhere down the line causes a person to become suicidal and all these other things, have these unfortunate emotional feelings. So I want you to encourage people to be a little bit more kinder to their fellow kinsmen in terms of like schools and stuff like that. That's kind of like where it happens in today's day and age, whatever you would say, and also anything else on behalf of the Caribbean Voice.
Well, we have we've come up with a number of mottos that reflect the work we do. One of them is 5 minutes of your time can save a life.
Okay.
No matter how busy you are, if you see somebody that you think is not looking like the normal person he or she should be, or even if that's not the case, stop, have a chat.
Right.
Ask so that it sounds like you mean it. How are you doing? Is there anything wrong? Can I help you?
Right.
You'd be amazed that you might cause that person to open up and then put in motion something that can bring help that person needed, but nobody cared to find out in the first place.
Right.
So take 5 minutes of your time. Smile, ask the questions. Even if everything's okay, at least you've brought a little bit of cheer into that person's life because you've connected in some way with that person.
Right.
And if it's not okay, you might be the person who finds out and then sets in motion something to get help to that person. So 5 minutes of your time, it can save a life. Picking up on what Shana said, I needed to mention that when we started out, yes, we depended on small donations from friends and families. But because of the amount of work we do, on a monthly basis, we spend anywhere between 100,000 and 500,000 Guyana dollars. We needed to raise our own funds, and that is where Concert for Hope and all these things came in. We actually do raise our funds to do the work in Guyana. We have a budget and we work towards it, but this lay counselor program was not part of our regular set of activities, so it wasn't budgeted for. When we decided that we needed to do it, we realized that we have to bring in the funds some other way. That was why we did the lay counselor program, and that is why we're doing these other things. So it's not like we're going to be coming to you forever and ever to ask you for donations. We're simply asking you to help us to reach this particular target so that we can implement this program. And that's it. We're not going to, what we do on a regular basis in Guyana, we raise the funds ourselves to cover. So I needed to make that point. And I also wanted to say that a lot of people have been touching base with us to say, well, look, yes, we're Guyanese, but we live here. Our children are born here. We need to take care of what's happening here.
Right.
And nobody's stepping in to fill the gap. So we've decided that either later this year or early next year, the Caribbean Voice will officially launch our activism in North America. And the things we're doing in Guyana, we will be doing them over here.
My time with you is officially over. Let me say thank you to Mr. Ravi Kumar and the staff and management of ITV for hosting us here today for today's program. Until next week, have a blessed, a wonderful, and a prosperous week ahead. We're definitely looking out for you.